So Renaissance, should have read last night about the Renaissance. We read a little bit on Friday as well. What does the Renaissance mean?
Rebirth.
A rebirth. And a rebirth of these. Oh, it's not showing up that well. I'll see what it says. A rebirth of this Greek and Roman art, literature, ideas, philosophies, all that kind of stuff. And it's going to take place in Italy. Now, why Italy? We talked a little bit about this when we read the book, and you should know, but what are some reasons other than what's listed up here? That you read about. What happened in the Middle Ages? They didn't touch on this a lot in the book, but some things that happened in the Middle Ages. You've got the bubonic plague. 2/3 of the population is hit harder in these cities. And Italy during this time, because of the Crusades, because of this new merchant class that comes up, I have this right here, the merchant class. Because of the Crusades, it established this trade route to Asia. What was that trade route called? The Silk Road. Now, between Asia and Europe, there lived a group of people known as the Ottoman Turks, or a lot of people classify them as like Muslims, but it's like in the Middle East, right? And that was kind of the whole point of the Crusades, was taking back the Holy Lands for the Roman Catholic Church, or for the Christians, and away from these Muslim invaders, right? Y'all remember that from last year? So the Italians and these Ottoman Turks had a really good relationship, and they exclusively traded with Italy. So Italy was super rich and prosperous, okay? Now, combat that with the fact that they had all this money, and a lot of them, 60% of the population is going to die. You're kind of left with not a lot of people, especially in the working class, so below the merchant class, that are going to be available to work, okay? So if there's not a lot of people available to work, and that's kind of happening right now, what can these workers now do when they go to apply for a job? And these employers like, we need people to work, we need people to work. What can they do? Ask for more money. That's exactly, I would be like, I'm the one that's in demand. You need me to work, right? So I have 3 different people offering me jobs. What are you going to give me in return? Are you going to give me more money? Are you going to give me more days off? That's probably more for me. More days off? Like, what is it? What kind of things are you going to give me? So all of a sudden, everybody's got money in Italy, okay? Now, also Italy, compared to the rest of Europe, they do have thriving cities that are kind of like our cities today, rather than cities that are did you see that? Compared to the rest of Europe, which is mostly rural. Rural meaning what? Farmland, okay, country. We call it country, All right, other things. Why else Italy? Ruins of the Roman Empire are literally around them. In the book last night, they called them heathen ruins. They have these ancient Latin manuscripts from these monasteries. As the Turks, these Ottoman Turks, were coming through and conquering Constantinople, a lot of the scholars took a lot of the Greek manuscripts and fled with them to Italy for fear that the Ottomans would burn them or somehow get rid of them. Geography is going to play a big thing with this as well. They're smack dab in the middle of all this, right? And they jut out into the middle of the ocean, so literally everybody can get to them, right? Thriving cities, merchant class, bubonic plague, crusades, and all that. Also, because of the amount of war that happened, you got crusades, also the 100 Years' War is kind of almost over at this point, as well as the fact that the plague happened, these old institutions people started to be like, okay, so the government was supposed to protect me from war, and the church's responsibility was to help ease my suffering through all the bubonic plague, through all this stuff, and they're not doing that. And that's what it says down here that got cut off. But it says questioning of those institutions. The institutions that the church and the government. Okay? So what's going to happen is, especially with the church, is that people are going to shift to a more secular way of life rather than having a pious life. Okay, we should know those words, right? Secular, apart from the church. Things now are very secular. If you listen to Taylor Swift, that is secular music, not from the church, correct? That's the first person I could think of, okay? Love her. Anyways, that's a more secular way. So that movement away from the church and focusing more on materials and enjoying life. Also, I mean, they've survived, the people that are left, they survived the plague. The plague killed 60% of the population. That's significant, okay? So they have this like new outlook on life, like, I'm going to start living it up. Do you remember years ago, like, this might be too much for y'all, because y'all are so young, but YOLO, do you remember that term?
You only live once.
You only live once, okay? That's still kind of around, because they have YOLO boards, you know? But you only live once. Like, this is what they're doing right now, okay? Kind of living it up based on the secular way. And they are going to, they have lots of money, and so therefore they're able to spend it and enjoy life, okay? They're not so focused on the church, that pious way of living. All right. So also what's unique about Italy is they are comprised of city-states. They are not unified as we know it today. Milan, they were really good with like armory and metalworking and stuff like that. Venice, if you see right here, is closest to the Ottoman Empire, these Ottoman Turks, and they're going to have exclusive trading rights with the Ottoman Empire. And if they're the only ones that can do it, they have all the goods. So what can they do to the price of their goods? Raise them. What is that called when one company owns a monopoly, the exclusive rights of that particular whatever, and they jack up the price, okay? Now, our government protects us from monopolies of a specific trade, okay? So definitely Venice is very much a monopoly. If we have time, we can watch this video, but it is about the Ottoman, it's a crash course world history on the Ottoman Turks in Venice.
I love Crash Course.
And he's good, John Green, okay? So Florence, we talked about that a lot, right? In the book yesterday, or in the book on Friday. Florence is where all of it's going to kind of take place. And it's going to be ruled by this Medici family. Now, what were the Medicis? What did they do?
Betrayed wool.
Good. And?
I don't know.
Banking. They were big-time bankers. So if they were big-time bankers, what would happen?
There would be lots of money.
They have a lot of money. Okay. So if they have a lot of money, they can then take that money, loan it to people, and not just people, but governments as well. And with these governments, or people that are in charge, these leaders, basically they're funding the person in charge, and the person in charge just does whatever they tell them. So Florence, it will be essentially ruled by the Medici family. So they're in Italy, because they're these city-states, there's no central unified monarchical state. They don't have a single strong ruler, which made it easy for city-states to remain independent. They're not going to become really a country until like the late 1800s, or around in there, to be like fully unified. All the things I said, prospered in terms of trade. Competition is going to lead to them wanting to be the most famous city-state. So therefore, they're always trying to kind of one-up each other. Advances in literature, architecture, art, music, science, and even education. But the biggest thing is going to be this merchant class. A lot of the Renaissance is going to take place in the merchant class because these are all of a sudden people that aren't nobility have earned their right to be wealthy by what they have done, right? What's a merchant?
Someone who sells things.
Right, a trader. That's what trader. Any questions?
Can we watch the Venice video now?
No, unfortunately.
That was kind of rude.
All right, humanism is going to be something else that is going to come out of this. So stemming from this idea of secular, so separating themselves from the church, but it's going to focus on human potential and achievements. What can you do rather than what you do as a profession? He talked about that in the book as well. It is going to be stimulated by the study of Greek and Roman history, literature, philosophy, and culture. So a lot of people at this time or before were trying to take Greek and Roman texts and apply them to Christian values. And a lot of times they don't go hand in hand, okay? But this human potential and achievement. So I have this little graphic up here, but a humanist thinks that our lives and world are ours and ours alone. We make our own destiny. We do what is best for us. The future comes with the yet to be known. So thinking about like science, trying to figure out how the world works, that kind of stuff. Happiness comes from working to benefit society. So here and now. If we benefit society, therefore you can have achievements. World around you can be better. Okay? Values and ideas can change as knowledge and understanding advance. Now, if you were thinking about social classes, what social class do you think supported the ideals of humanism the most?
The merchants.
Why?
Because they could work up their way to wealth, and so they must have stressed human potential.
Exactly. Exactly. Did everybody hear that? The merchant class. That was the social class that supported it the most because this is the first time you have a social class and it's not rigid anymore like the ideas of feudalism. They can now be more wealthy than nobility. This Medici family, they controlled all of Florence, not the nobles, right? Questions about humanism? What are some examples of in today's culture of the ideas of humanism? My daughter does U8 soccer. She just did mini kickers where they clump and go around soccer. It was hilarious. She's 6, about to be 7. At the end of the season, what'd she get? A trophy. Not just any trophy. What's the word that needs to come before that? A participation trophy. But y'all, she was so excited about that. And to be honest, to be fair, her last year, they were undefeated. So I feel like it's not just participation this year, okay? Even though it was U8, so you don't keep score. Actually, it's not even U8, it was 4 or 5 last year. And that, to me, is a perfect example of this idea of humanism, right? Look what I did. This is what I get, this beautiful, shiny participation trophy, okay? The ideas of humanism, celebrating and being here in what you did and accomplished, okay? All right. Writing is going to be heavily influenced this time. What would be the main focus of writing prior to the Renaissance? What would writers write about?
Like knights and stuff.
Like what?
Chivalry, knights and stuff.
Okay, so maybe those types of stories, chivalry, but what else? Church. okay, God, or something along those lines. There are stories, but I mean, if you think about like the Canterbury Tales, like they're on their way to Canterbury, which is like a church, okay? So definitely focus on the church. But with the influence of everything and the movement of the Renaissance to the north, writing began to change. People started writing in their own vernacular. What is vernacular? The language in which you speak. We have different vernacular here in the South, right? Than they do in the North. What is something we say in the South that they don't say up North? Y'all, even though I will say they've started to say y'all, and I'm not here for it. Okay? What else do they say? What else do we say? I've got some good words that you might not know. Has anyone ever heard of cattywampus?
Yeah.
Cattywampus, so kind of crooked. I use this a lot. Tump over. Does anyone use that word? Tump over. See, not a lot of people know tump over. Like literally, like all the way over. Anything else? My grandmother used to say yonder.
I say yonder.
In yonder. I'm like, Grandma, where? Like, is that the kitchen? Is that the living? Like, what are we talking about? Okay. What other things? I feel like pronunciation of words too. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, I'm not that bad, but like I got some country family, so and it's very different. But same thing with the North. What do they say? The North. Use guys pop. Does anyone say pop for like Coke or soda? Little things like that. Okay, so that's definitely a vernacular. Also, writing is going to be self-expression or portray of the individual of the subject. Literature, or all this, is going to flourish due to the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg. Okay? This printing press is going to be invented, and the first book that he is going to print on the printing press is what?
Bible.
The Bible. Are we shocked? The Bible. Because it was the most popular book of the time. Okay, this is still 1455, so very, very early on in the Renaissance. Because of this, or prior to this, people using their own native language, their own vernacular, what did people write in? Huh? No. What language? Sorry. Latin. Okay, Latin. So prior to this series, I can see that. That's so bad. Sorry. Ink. Yes. I know, me too. This is the correct answer. But they were writing in Latin. So within just one century, between 15 and 1600, you'll see the English language is almost completely revised because of the rediscovery of ancient Greek and Latin texts. These Latin texts are going to heavily influence the way that the English language was spoken. And then also you'll see later when I introduce a man named Martin Luther is going to completely revise the German language of the time to basically be the German language of today, which is pretty cool. All right, so here are four main people I'm going to talk about, or I actually have another one on the next slide. Francesco Petrarch, he's the father of Renaissance humanism, wrote poems in his vernacular. But he is going to be the first one, this Renaissance humanism, the writer, okay, writing in the ideas of love. You didn't get married for love prior to this. It was rare, okay? I mean, really, you didn't live long enough sometimes to even get married. Desiderius Erasmus and Thomas More, they are considered Christian humanists. And that's significant because if you think about humanism and you think about Christian values, how can you apply those together? What they wanted to do was to essentially create a society that was beneficial for your personal relationship with God. So turning the piety, the ideas of living just suffering in order to get to heaven, suffering on earth, the prize is heaven, that all of a sudden these people are like, no, like God is I can have that personal relationship with God here on earth rather than whoever in the clergy, priest, or whatever is interceding on my behalf. Make sense? So Erasmus wrote The Praise of Folly. He used humor in immoral and ignorant behavior of people, including the clergy. He felt people should be able to be open-minded and kind to others. Thomas More wrote Utopia. Believed men and women should live in harmony. There's no private property. Everybody works to benefit society. And then, even farther north, like once the Renaissance spreads into England, Great Britain, in what they know as the Elizabethan age, and you'll learn about this when you learn about Romeo and Juliet in a couple of weeks. He, a lot of times, is going to base his writings off of what the English believed the Renaissance was like. So a lot of Greek and Roman like stories, like what he writes about Julius Caesar, and all those types of plays. But he's going to have a definite skewed idea of what the Renaissance in Italy is like because he's never actually been. Okay? All right, questions? Another famous writer is Niccolo Machiavelli. And he is going to write this book called The Prince. Now, this is a quote from it. One can make this generalization about men. They are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. They shun danger and are greedy for profit. So therefore, because men are this way, a ruler should be willing to do anything to maintain control without worrying about conscience. So they shouldn't worry, like, is this the right decision or not? They need to make decisions in order to maintain control. And so the whole premise of his book, that we'll kind of talk about tomorrow in a little more depth, is it, or he says, is it better for a ruler to be feared than to be loved? That's kind of the whole question. And he gets to the end where he says it's better to be feared than loved. A ruler should be quick and decisive in decision-making. A ruler keeps power by any means necessary. So what is that alluding to?
Evil, horrible.
That's correct. So by evil, by force, by any means necessary. And that the end justifies the means. Okay? Be good when possible, and evil when necessary. So you'll see over the next, because of the influence of the Renaissance, because of all the money that's coming through, the idea of government is going to begin to change. Okay? That's a little foreshadow. Questions about Machiavelli? All right, just a reminder, these notes are online. Where are they located?
WAG.
The WAG that you should bookmark. Does everybody know how to do that? If you don't know how to do it, I'd be happy to help you. It takes 2 seconds. With a partner that I'm going to give you, this is your exit slip. So as you exit, you hand them to me. Identify and explain. It doesn't have to be a lot, maybe a sentence. 2 causes and 2 effects. Another name for effects, in this case, is legacy. Something it leaves behind. Of the Renaissance, using a blue sticky note for causes and a yellow sticky note for effects. Okay, I have both of those things. I'm not expecting you to have this, okay? Look at chapter 1, section 2, page 51 for help on effects in the textbook. When you are finished with those sticky notes, you can start to read chapter 28, but I don't think you have time. Okay?